Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I have to put up with the rain. That's something I can't do anything about. Move countries, I suppose. Right, as mentioned in the Sunday chat, this was the next one to come up for a repot. And there's the reason why, soggy moss. And this is for a Dendrobium. This is totally out of order. It's just solid moss, and it's not even all moss, I don't think. It looks like there was some sort of lump of something in the middle. But what I'm going to do is that this has been grown on from a seedling, so you've got these younger canes, and that back part of the plant isn't really required anymore. It's surplus to requirement, so I'm just going to take it off, and that has just saved me an awful lot of work, because what's left now is the bit of the plant that I want and the live roots. So we're now repotting something a lot more simple than it would have been before. Yeah, unfortunately a lot of these roots have gone. They've just been too wet. And it's difficult to do much about that when it's in moss, and you know you've still got to water, still got to get fresh water into the medium, otherwise it just goes stale. So I'm just taking these old ones off, and that leaves us with quite a nice clean plant now. We've got the two pseudo bulbs that have still got leaves on, and we've got our new growth pushing on with its associated new roots, and some of those roots are still pushing out, so they've still to grow. So I think this is going to have a root recovery very quickly. And a tip, don't very often do something as a direct. I was once going to do a Roger's tips, wasn't I? And that got forgotten. Fell by the wayside. But a good tip is, if you are repotting something and there's a section of the plant that you know you're not going to keep, cut it off, because you can see how much work that's just saved. That saved me doing all the work on those roots, because it's not necessary. I wasn't going to keep that part of the plant. Learn carefully, look at others and things like that, as to which parts of plants can be discarded and which bits can't. Just because a Dendrobium cane hasn't got leaves, you notice I didn't remove this one. Well, first of all, it's got the new growth coming out of it. It's a solid, thick, sturdy cane. In fact, it's less shriveled than the two canes with leaves. The two canes with leaves have got virtually no roots. Yeah, those roots under those canes were dead. So they've had difficulty hydrating, and always will. They'll always stay shriveled now. But yeah, just go steady. And the other thing, another tip, is that was a large pot. Well, it was a large root ball once. Unfortunately, the roots that were in it are dead, and the media and everything was dead. You notice I never, or incredibly rarely, choose the pot I'm going to put it in until I've got it out and cleaned it up. Because as you can now see, that does not want a big pot. That wants quite a small pot. And because of the size of the plant, that means it's going to be top heavy and unstable. So I've now got to bear that in mind when choosing my pot. Okay, so I'm just going to pop that down there. I'll get rid of all this mess, including the junk pot. These are rubbish, aren't they? You couldn't get a more manky pot than that, could you? One drainage hole in the middle, which is not really sufficient. Okay, just get rid of the mess, and I'll find myself a pot and we'll get this potted up. I'll be back. Well, there's one good thing about looking for a clean pot. If you've got some new ones, you don't need to look for a clean one, do you? I'm just going to find my clips. I've preempted this not being very stable because of the shortness of the roots and the lack of volume of the root ball. So consequently, I've already stuck a cane. I've stuck it onto the outside of the pot, and I've put some of the large rock hard chunky bark in the bottom to maintain the airflow around the base of the plant, and then we'll start topping up with medium bark to start with, bearing in mind there won't be any roots in this part of the pot for a while. And then what I'm going to do is going to mix some medium with some small to go around the actual plant. Now I'm going to base the plant's position on the fact that I need to be able to stake it. So it's this cane that's going against the stake that's the important bit. All the rest isn't so important. And then we'll just top up around these roots. The medium will just fall in place because it's dry. If it was wet, it probably wouldn't, and it would be a lot more difficult to make sure the roots were in it. But yeah, it's a mixture of medium and small, with emphasis on the small near the top of the pot where the new roots are, because that will need to stay a little moister for a while to keep those roots growing. There we go. Now all I need now is a clip of some sort. I should think a grabby one will be. We've got a big grabby one. How about that one? That's got it nicely. And that makes it reasonably stable now, stable enough that those roots can get going, and as they grow they will get down into the medium and then into the large chunks. By then they will have been watered in and settled. There's a settling process. When you've got lots of odd shapes, you know, you've got a bit sticking up here and a bit here, as the water comes on things start to settle. And although that means there's a few less air gaps, it means the pieces themselves are more stable and less likely to move around when you pick the pot up, which is quite important. Right, so a good watering now, and we are getting to the bad stage out here that we were at, and I looked it up in my notes. In August last year, this whole place was cleaned because it was starting to get covered in mould. Well, hey presto, a year later it's doing it again, and it is quite bad. Most of the plastic's got mould on it. At least the actual panels haven't this time, because they were the hardest bit to clean because you're arching over all the time. But I mean, if I just lift this out the way for a second, you might be able to see even here, look, the table has got mould on it. So we've got to deal with it. And it's the sort of thing I can deal with a bit at a time, if you see what I mean. You know, if I get some 5-20 mixed up in the appropriate portions while I've still got some, and a nice cloth and a bucket, and we'll just start wiping. And when I've had enough or my back starts to hurt, we'll put that to one side, carry on the next day. But it shouldn't take too long. All of the shelves are on little, well, all of the shelves are sitting on these, and these slide across the floor really easily and don't scratch it or leave marks. So moving the shelves will be very easy. The hard bit will be making sure the plants don't fall over as the shelf gets moved. A precaution might be worth taking all the plants off a shelf before I move it. Do everything behind where that shelf was, put it back, put the plants back on, move on to the next bit. So that sort of thing is what is going to have to be done, because my next house inspection is the beginning of September. The trouble is I don't want to do it too soon and then have it starting to come back, but it didn't come back last time we did it. We did the whole lot in August, had to go at the floor as well with the mop, did everything, and it's just started to get bad again in the last month. And I don't know why it's this time of year, but the thing I have noticed is my humidity at night is creeping up all the time, and I'm wondering whether it might be worth getting the dehumidifier out again for the night time, just to keep it down at night and stop it building up. Because on days like this where it's drizzly and I haven't got the heat, that humidity's in here all day long. you know. So anyway, we've got to give this a good water and settle that media down, get those roots set in with something to grow into, and hopefully we'll have a pot full of roots in a month or two's time. And that'll do for today. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.